A warm welcome to everyone on the BioE3 podcast by BioSpectrum. This is Dr. Manveena Chawla, Executive Editor at BioSpectrum. In August 2024, the Government of India introduced the BioE3 policy, Biotechnology for Economy, Environment and Employment, with the vision of strengthening high-performance biomanufacturing and using biotechnology to create economic value, sustainable solutions, and new employment opportunities. The policy aims to build an ecosystem where promising biotechnology innovations can move effectively from the laboratory to process development, pilot scale manufacturing, and ultimately the market. Well, 2 years have now passed since the launch of BioE3. So, this is an appropriate time to move beyond discussing the vision of the policy and to understand what it is beginning to mean in practice. What opportunities has it created? What gaps is it addressing for the biotechnology industry? And most importantly, how is it helping beneficiaries translate scientific capabilities into scalable technologies and manufacturing platforms? To discuss this further, BioSpectrum has invited Dr. Vishal Warke, Director of Research and Development at HiMedia Laboratories. He is a medical graduate and holds a PhD in cell biology and molecular genetics from the University of Maryland in the US. With more than 2 decades of R&D experience, his expertise spans cell culture media development and biopharmaceutical process development, scale-up, GMP manufacturing and commercialization of indigenous serum-free media and feed technologies. He is also the recipient of the Bharat Innovator Award for the development and commercialization of affordable chemically defined serum-free media and feeds for biosimilar manufacturing. So, 2 years into BioE3, let us hear directly from the beneficiary, HiMedia, who is working at the interface of biotechnology research, technology development, and industrial scale up, and to understand what this policy means for the future of Indian biotechnology. Dr. Vishal, welcome to the podcast by BioSpectrum.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Our pleasure. Well, let me begin with the first question of the podcast. It's very simple indeed. That BioE3 stands for Biotechnology for Economy, Environment, and Employment. Now, from an industry point of view, how would you explain its relevance?
So, the bioeconomy is a very critical element of a country's entire economy, and it's a significant contributor to the GDP. Today, though there is AI everywhere and robotics is coming up in a big way, but at the end of the day, we are human beings and things have to serve us. So the biotechnology space is meant to serve the human beings, the nature, and the planet around us and keep it in a good condition. So essentially, there are six thematic sectors, which are the six priority areas in the BioE3 policy. One is bio-based chemicals and enzymes. Then you have functional foods and smart proteins. There is precision biotherapeutics. Then there is climate resilient agriculture, carbon capture and utilization, and futuristic marine and space research. So these six form the base of how the BioE3 policy would be implemented. And in these different areas, a lot of work and progress has to be done. Now, India's bioeconomy today is around $200 billion. So it's 195.3 billion, but it's $200 billion, you can say that. And it contributes approximately 5% of the GDP of the nation. What has been envisaged is going forward, we should be doubling it by 2030, which is reach around 400 billion.
Okay.
We should reach around 700 billion by 2035 and 2.6 trillion by 2047, which is Amrit Kal. And this is the stated objective of the biotech arm of the nation, or the DBT and the DST. So any developed nation, if it has to be called as developed, it should have, say, 7 to 10% of its entire GDP supported through a bioeconomy. And by Amrit Kal, the target is to reach 25 to 26 trillion dollars. 10% of that is 2.6 trillion dollars. So these are the broad objectives. Now, what do we mean by economy? Economy means converting research into scalable businesses, exports, and import reducing technologies. Environment means using biology to manufacture sustainably with greater resource efficiency to lower waste products and have a smaller footprint. So, sustainability, as our Honorable Prime Minister said, zero effect and zero defect. So, zero effect means that the environment should be protected and it should not harm the environment. So, there should be no deleterious effect or harmful effect on the environment. And if this is done properly, then employment is a natural outcome where we can generate high skilled jobs across different branches like process engineering, analytics, quality, regulatory affairs, automation, manufacturing. So, thus, it is very important that BioE3, which it will play the role, it will connect the scientific capability with industrial competitiveness and sustainable growth.
Absolutely, very well said there. So let me move forward with the next question, which is that how are initiatives like this BioE3 policy helping the biotech industry? I mean, is it really helping solve certain challenges? What are your views on that?
Yes, it is very important because what happens is, though in Sanskrit there is a phrase, Pindande te Brahmande, which means what is there in the macrocosm also exists in the microcosm, and it's a replica. But in biology, as they say, 2 plus 2 is not always 4. There is asymmetry in the body. There is a lot of asymmetry everywhere in nature. So essentially, what works on small scale need not always work on large scale. So from a design stage and the ideation stage, it is important to check as to what is happening. So for example, what works well in a 100 ml or a liter stage in a biotech process will not automatically work the same way in a 100 liter or a 1,000 liter or a 10,000 liter scale. So there are many factors that affected, like oxygen transfer, mixing, temperature. So many things exist in a bioreactor, right? Or a fermenter. So the industry needs an intermediate step between lab research, the ideation stage, and the commercial factory. And that is where pilot scale biomanufacturing facilities become very important for two reasons. One is to give the proof of concept validity. So people would know that whatever they have thought and designed would work is actually working. And this happens to the biofoundries, which works on the DBTL principle, which is design, build, test, and learn. It's an iterative loop process where that would happen. And the second is to know how to scale it up. So if you take it to a pilot scale in such facilities which are envisaged, then from there going commercial is much more easy, and it's a fundable project. People would then have faith to fund it. So that's why we have the TRL scale, technological readiness level scale, and then things get pushed to 7, 8, and that kind of a TRL level. So this is very important.
Right. Well, nice of you to point that out. But looking at the biotech startups or the smaller players, how are they specifically benefiting in this aspect?
So the important thing here for startups and small companies we have to understand is they do not have a lot of money. They do not have a lot of infrastructure at their disposal. They have brilliant ideas which actually could work and be transformative in nature. So the central benefit for them is to access capability without premature ownership of infrastructure. This is a very important point because biotech is a very expensive field. It is not like, let's say, IT, where if you have a large IT park, all they need more or less is a large car park where 1,000 people, 1,000 employees would park their cars, and they need computer terminals. Other than that, there is not a huge capex requirement of equipment. That's how an IT industry generally runs and functions. So the human capital is critical. In biotech, though the human capital is very important, you also have a criticality of the infrastructure. And the machines are very expensive. each machine, like a fermenter or a bioreactor, or let's say a GCMS or an LCMS, can cost anywhere from 50 lakh to a crore to 2 crores to 3 crores, the whole gamut. So the small companies have to make sure that they do not spend money in expensive infrastructure and end up completely getting out of funds. So
Hmm.
today, India has more than 11,800 biotech startups. And the young company should focus on the quality of its idea and proving the complexity of the idea by taking it through the DBTL cycle and showing that it can be manufactured.
Hmm.
And BioE3's shared foundries, biofoundries, and biomanufacturing hubs can do this function. And they can actually function as the national manufacturing commons, which means um, these all companies can go to these centers and they can get guidance from there, and they can get their ideas translated at least to the pilot scale at these places. So, in short, I guess that kind of answers the question. So, just to sum it up, if all these conditions that are needed are met, then smaller biotech companies can compete as focused, innovation led product businesses rather than spending scarce capital on duplicating the infrastructure.
Absolutely, we could not agree less on that. Now, very interestingly, you mentioned something about the human capital also. So, focusing the question on the employment opportunities, what are your views on the employment opportunities which are being generated through the BioE3 policy?
So, um, today, around 33 lakh people are employed in the biotech sector. And we have around 259 people per million people in the research space. This is a huge shortage. So we need to increase that. That's one. Secondly, as we move forward, the government envisages that we should at least touch 3 crore jobs in the biotech sector. Now, the beauty of the biomanufacturing is it creates a very broad employment ecosystem because it takes in a huge amount of diverse fields. For example, microbiologists, biotechnologists, cell culture scientists, molecular biologists. And these are the bio part, but not only the bio people, but also the others like engineers, analytical scientists, IT professionals who are related with quality systems and AI platforms, quality professionals, regulatory specialists, automation experts, data scientists. So there's a whole cohort. And plus, there are the manufacturing experts and the manufacturing personnel. So when biotechnology moves from research into manufacturing, the number and diversity of jobs increase significantly. And there's a study done by the USDA where they saw that one bioeconomy job generally generates 3 jobs in the general economy. So this spillover effect will happen. So let's say by Amrit Kal, if we have 3 crore jobs, we would end up creating 9 to 10 crore additional jobs in the general economy.
Wow, that's a big number, and you very beautifully set up the context about the importance and relevance and the opportunities in store through the BioE3 policy. Now, let me just bring the focus on high media because it's one of the beneficiaries of the policy. So, Dr. Vishal, tell me what capabilities are you developing through this support?
So at the outset, first I want to thank the DBT, BIRAC, and the NBM for their gracious support, without which we would not have been able to do what we are able to achieve today. And what we have been tasked with is to develop chemically defined serum-free media for biotherapeutic protein production, or the specific aspect being biosimilar production from Chinese hamster ovary cells. So a platform was created to make this chemically defined serum-free media. And this platform today is helping us support not just the biopharm industry, but also the vaccine, cell gene therapy, cultured meat, and other allied industries. So how we look at it is, you can say maybe like a tripod. I'm just giving an analogy to explain things. So it's like a tripod structure, or you can call it like a pyramid structure. So let's say the base of the pyramid is a triangle, like in a tripod, and the
Mhm.
apex narrows and goes to the top. So a three-pointed triangle at the base. So what we have in the 3 points of this tripod, or the three legs of the tripod, or the 3 points of the pyramid at the base is one, media development aspect, which is using design of experiment, response surface methodology, DOE, RSMS, they are known, PLS regression. Um, Also with that, there is SMA, or spent media analytics. Then there is MFA, or metabolic flux analysis. So the MFA part is a relatively new part, which
Mhm.
is right now coming up in a very big way. And earlier, this was not really approachable. But now,
Mhm.
because of LLMs and the AI with their huge compute capacity, like the data centers, what they can do, they are like supercomputers all over now. So a
Right.
lot of MFA can be done, and this is also going to be a game changer. So this is something we're integrating now in our systems,
Mhm.
because one black hole that the biopharma industry faces is, for example, when they make the biosimilars, they have to take the base media
Mhm.
from company X, though the company X also makes the feed. Many times the feed is not suitable for their clone. So the base media is from company X, and they have to use the feed from company Y, some other company. And not just that, but sometimes they have to blend a feed or a base from company Z into it to get their desired result. Now, this will
Mhm.
all change, because what we are doing here is setting up the SMA, or the spent media analytics. With the
Mhm.
SMA, you can actually look at what the cells are consuming, what the cells consume through the different stages of growth, and as they produce the monoclonal antibody or the protein of interest, we can then tweak the cell's requirements by giving it specific nutrients at that time point without overdosing the cells. So what happens is, now this becomes a lean medium, it becomes a very effective and optimum medium, and the growth is good, plus the cost of the medium can go down. This is very important, and no need of blending and mixing. Now this is an ideation stage that I told you we are working on this. So this is one leg of the tripod, where
Okay.
you look at the different formulations and do this. Then the
Right.
next leg of the tripod is, you take these formulations, you put them through the whole works. For example, uh, on the robotic liquid handling systems, we make thousands of combinations of media, and then that
Mhm.
is funneled upwards. So, for example, from 50 ml scale tube reactors with maybe hundreds of combinations, or 100 combinations, or 80 combinations, we can
Right.
narrow the funnel. The better performing combinations are taken up and taken to, let's say, 150 ml scale at
Right.
in shaker incubators. So this could be maybe 30 or 50 combinations. The better performing of these are taken to the 1 liter bioreactor scale, where we could maybe handle 10 or 15 at a time. Let's say, I'm just giving an example. From here,
Mhm.
we move to the 5 liter scale with the better formulations of these. And here, then we can look at some few combinations, like 2, 3 media formulations, which are really the best performers, the optimum performers. And then they go to the 10 liter scale, and from there to 50 liter scale. So this is the funnel which narrows. And then eventually you can come with a good combination which works at the 50 liter scale. So here you have developed the media as optimum for the clone,
Mhm.
and you have also optimized your process. So one is the media
Right.
formulation, and the second is optimization of your bioprocess. This is the second leg of, excuse me, the tripod. The third leg now is the analytical leg,
Okay.
because as you are simultaneously doing the scale up and funneling down to better combinations, you also need to look at what the cell is doing, what the cell is consuming, what the cell is producing, and the protein, or the, let's say, the monoclonal antibody, the MAB, which is being produced. what critical attributes it has. They are known as the CQAs. For example, the glycation or glycan profile, the uh, aggregate profile, so on and so forth. There are different things, that charge variants, different things that one looks at. So
Right.
one has to simultaneously look at this. So with the GCMS, LCMS, HRMS, and amino acid analyzer, ICPMS, we are able to look at different parts of the medium, like amino acids, vitamins, the elements, fats, lipids, fatty acids, nucleotides, nucleosides, polyamines, sugars. It's a complex cohort. And
Right.
we then can dive into the TCA cycle and all that. So this is the third leg where everything gets tied in. Now the apex, as I mentioned, the single point at the top could be of the pyramid could be that, okay, now you have gotten a good, well-performing medium, but you need to manufacture it accurately at scale. So for that, we have set up a GMP production facility, which can produce 100 tons of cell culture media per day. Now, this, as far as I know, is the largest manufacturing facility in the whole world.
Wow.
And so, why we did this is because, see, we have always been hearing this, that if you want to compete globally, we need to have scale. And
Absolutely.
where many times some companies in India fall short is they don't have the scale commensurate as needed to compete with the entire EU, the European Union, or to compete with China. For example, there are companies in China that make 100 metric tons of a single amino acid per day. So, looking at this, we thought that we should set the scale right now so that we can scale it up right up to Amrit Kal. We hope we fall short, which means we are growing well, but that is the whole process. So, this ties everything in, and we have now become like a center that can support the biotech in our country by helping them manufacture bulk media. So people can come to us, they can use us as an incubation center, they can use us as a mentor, as a chaperone, and we can scale things up for them, so on and so forth. So this, in a nutshell, is how we have utilized the BIRAC, the NBM support, and also put in money from our side to help India reach Amrit Kal.
That is indeed fantastic. And I'm sure with the such large scale to reach, there must be certain bottlenecks or limitation, when it comes to actual implementation of such policies. So would you like to talk a bit about the, bottlenecks, what might come across and how would you assess those?
Yes, there are always challenges and bottlenecks. So one of the main challenge that we faced was that creating infrastructure alone does not automatically lead to successful scale up. So you need to have experienced technical teams, robust quality systems, a lot of SOPs, which is standardized operating procedures, reliable raw material supply chains. This is very important because in today's difficult situation, it's known as the VUCA world, or where you have uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and volatility. That's the V. So in a VUCA world, it's a big problem. Supply chains are, so a lot of raw material is sourced into the nation today. So we are also working on seeing how we can integrate vertically, and we are also working with the government to see how the raw materials can be made in India so that we are self-sufficient and atmanirbhar. That's the right word, I should say. Again, IP protection, confidentiality. So there are many things that have to be taken care of and protected. So one way how we manage to overcome is by setting up end-to-end capabilities. We realize that as much as possible, we need to set up things end-to-end in-house. So we have developed capabilities across the complete translation pathway, from media and process development to analytical evaluation to bioreactor scale up, controlled manufacturing, so on and so forth. So as I mentioned, the pyramid, the 3 points, the apex. So finally, the whole story is complete and the blind spots have been filled in.
Yes, I'm sure it is challenging, and you are doing your best to take care of all these challenges and bottlenecks. And as we move forward, Dr. Vishal, my next question would be that from an industry perspective, what would you like to see in the next phase of BioE3?
Um, well, there are some things that are not necessarily BioE3, but they are very critical for the BioE3. For example, we need land reform, certain things of that sort, land, labor reform, judiciary reform, because at the end, that ends up impacting the bioeconomy also. A
Mhm.
simple case in point, amino acids are imported in India right now. To manufacture amino acids, the land has to be cheap, the labor has to be affordable, you need a lot of water. So we did some calculations and we realized that the way China supports the industry there, by subsidizing things and lots of different
Mhm.
things. So we have to think out of the box today. So such things are needed. The government is working hard on it, and I'm sure a lot of new policies will roll out. Now, coming to the BioE3 part and the specific bioeconomy part, it would be nice if different biofoundries, bio AI hubs, and biomanufacturing platforms get connected through a coordinated national network. That's
Mhm.
needed because each, it's like the six blind men of Hindustan, the poem that we learned in school, where six blind men went and one touched the trunk and he said, okay, this is like a tree, some or it's like a snake. So like this, the leg was like the tree trunk and the tail was like a snake. So essentially everybody is working in silos and they have their perceptions of the picture, but we need to put all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together, because the sum of the parts is always larger than the whole. So what we need is any company should be able to identify the required capability, whether it is strain development, cell culture optimization, fermentation, scale up, analytics, purification, or pilot manufacturing. And they should be able to access it through a transparent and efficient mechanism. Some things of this sort are happening where there are platforms where the government has asked everybody to put their infrastructure on it, and you can actually run through it and check things up. So, so basically, BioE3 can help to bridge the gap through milestone based scale up funding, shared quality, and regulatory support. One critical thing I would mention here is industry mentorship.
Mhm.
This is something I would like to see happen, because what happens is a lot of startups come from the academia, because these are scientists, these are postdocs, some have come from abroad, some are working in India, or there are professors who have brilliant ideas, and they generally work in the incubators of that university. So you could have an incubator in IIT or an incubator in NCBS or things like that. All over the nation, we have incubators. But these incubators don't necessarily have experience of running a company and taking it
Mhm.
commercial.
Mhm.
So, for example, in the forest, when they catch an elephant, you have trained elephants shepherd or chaperone the wild elephant so that the wild elephant gets trained better. Something like this. It's a crude example, like using nature. But essentially, what happens is, if you have an industry having an incubator, or companies tagged not just through an academic incubator with an industrial incubator, and the industry can have its umbrella of expertise. For example, in biotech, if we have fermentation, if we have media, if we can do some hydrolysate production, people who are allied to us, we can chaperone and handhold maybe 15, 20, 30 of such companies. So such a map of different industrial expertises should be created, where the industry, government, and the startups work together, because the death valley is where most of the companies crash and burn, and 95% of the companies don't make it to the death valley, because sales, marketing, production, scale up, regulatory, all these things are like second nature to an industry. They have been doing it for long. And the startups struggle in these things, where the university necessarily does not have the expertise or market access or the funding access, things of that sort. Novo in Norway, for example, they have incubator of their own, where this biotech giant
Mhm.
incubates 100 plus startups, and they maybe take 8% stake in these companies as equity. They do a lot of hand holding. So ideas of this kind can also be rolled out, and it can make a big difference in seeing that the death valley zone is skipped. So it would be great if instead of 90-95% companies folding up, if hardly 5% companies fold up for different reasons. So something like this can be thought of. I hope I have managed to cover what we expect, at least from an industry perspective. As HiMedia, I have just mentioned what can be done. So that's it. Thank you.
Yes, your point is very well taken. And as you rightly said, the opportunity lies in connecting research with process development, shared infrastructure, scale up manufacturing, entrepreneurship, and skilled employment. Well, thank you, Dr. Vishal. Thank you so much for engaging with us in this amazing conversation. And a special thank you for our audience for listening to this special conversation, which is all about celebrating 2 years of BioE3. Thank you so much, Dr. Vishal.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, ma'am.